before the death of Moses, he gives the Jewish people his final song, the song of Hazinu. Then he establishes Yoshua to be his successor. The Torah says here in the parsha, Vayavoy Moshe Vayedaber es kol divrei hashira hazois. Moses came and spoke all the words of this song, ba'aznei ha'am, in the ears of the people, who for Hoshea ben Nun, he and Hoshea the son of Nun. Rashi here gives us three very important details to what took place at this time. Let us look into Rashi 44, verse 44. He says like this: Who for Hoshea ben Nun? He and Hoshea ben Nun, Shabbos shel the Yuzgi Hoisa. It was a Shabbos of the set of peers. Nitla Rishus Mizeh, authority was taken from one, V'nitla Lezeh, and given to the other. Hemid loy Moshe Meturgaman lo Yeshua, Moses established a spokesman for Yeshua. Shei Doidish B'chayav, so that Yeshua should lecture in Moses' lifetime. Kedei shelo yomer Yisrael, so that Israel should not say, B'chayei Rabcha, in the lifetime of your teacher, you were unable to raise your head. Furthermore, Rashi goes on to say like this: we know that his name was Yehoshua. Yes. So why is he called Hoshea over here? Loimar, to say, to tell us that he did not become conceited, even though greatness had been given to him. Hishpil asma, he humbled himself, as he had been at the very outset. In other words, Yeshua's name originally was Hoshea. That was his name. And we know that in the parsha of Shalach, when Moses sent spies into the land of Israel, one of the spies and scouts that he sent was Hoshea. As it says, Vayikra Moshe LaHoshea ben Nun Yehoshua. Yehoshua was one of the spies, and because he was a student of Moses, he was Moses' prodigy and protege. He was both. He was a prodigy, he was a brilliant student. He was the number one student of Moshe, and he was also a protege. In other words, he was there with Moses and he helped Moses all the time. But yet, he was not in the limelight. Only in select times throughout the 40 years do we talk about Yeshua. Generally, what did he do? He sat all day and he studied in the tent. That's what he did. He studied day and night. And if Moshe needed something, he was there for Moshe. Moshe sent him to be a spy. He went. When they were fighting against Amalek, God said, Yeshua should be the general and fight against Amalek. But generally speaking, Yeshua was sitting all day studying Torah. That's all he did. And when he went into Israel at the beginning of the 40 years, at that time, Yeshua was how old? He was 56 years old. He was 56 years old. And Moshe Rabbeinu gave him a new name. Instead of calling him Hoshea, he called him Yehoshua. He added the letter Yud to his name. Rashi said over there already in Shalach, why did he call him Yehoshua instead of Hoshea? Because Yud and He are the first two letters of God's name. He added energy and blessing and protection to Yehoshua. As Rashi says, the spalel alav Yudke Yeshiacha me'atzas meraglim. May God protect you from the evil counsel of the spies. The spies came back with a negative report. Yeshua had to be the leader of the Jewish people. He had to hold strong. So Moses added prayer to Yehoshua by changing his name. Your name is the combination of life force that enters into your body. And that is why when a child is born, the parents are giving Ruach HaKodesh, they are giving prophecy. What name to give the child? And to give that child that name gives the child strength to overcome all challenges in their life. And sometimes, God forbid, if a person is very sick, very ill, a name will be added to that person because the name has power. And therefore you give the individual, the sick person, additional energy to overcome the sickness. Absolutely. Furthermore, by giving the person a new name, you also tell the angel of death, he has a new address, you can't find him. It's a new person. You're looking for Shmerel. This guy's not Shmerel, his name is Beryl. Somebody else. You found the wrong customer, go somewhere else. So the idea of giving a new name is that you're changing his address. The angel of death should not find him. But the point is, in general, the main concept of a name is energy. It's power. So Moshe Rabbeinu, when he goes out to the spies, gives him a new name, Yehoshua. Now that he becomes the new leader of the Jewish people, why is his name being diminished? Why does the Torah call him Hosea? Says Rashi to teach us, just like he was humble before he became the leader of the Jewish people, now too he is the same humble Yehoshua. He didn't become arrogant because, now I'm the big knacker. Now I'm the big leader. I'm the Nasi, the leader of the Jewish people. He remained humble as he was before. So now let us analyze this Rashi. Number one, Rashi says it was a Shabbos, a day that Moshe Rabbeinu gave Yehoshua a meturgamon. He gave him a spokesman. Now, in those days, there were no microphones. And when you spoke, your voice had to carry. Now, on Sinai, Moses spoke to all the Jewish people. There were 2 million people there at Sinai. But there we say that the Shekhinah, God's presence, spoke through his vocal cords. And therefore it projected. But on a day-to-day basis, how does a leader speak to 2 million people? So they had a meturgamon. They had someone who was a spokesperson, who had a very loud voice. And after the leader spoke, that spokesperson would now amplify the voice so that everybody would hear it. Once you had a meturgamon, it represented authority, it represented leadership. So the fact that Moses appointed a meturgamon for Yehoshua, it implied that he now gave him authority. But the question comes to mind, why do you give authority to your successor while you are still alive? In other words, throughout history, it says the sun sets and the sun rises. When the leader dies, the next leader takes over. But here it seems that on the day of Moses' death, already Joshua became a leader. Why does he pass on the baton? Why does he pass on this concept of successorship to Joshua while he is still alive? And Rashi tells us, because throughout the entire life of Joshua, he never taught before. He never was a rabbi, a teacher. We only knew him as Moses' prodigy or protege, and he was a general perhaps of the army when they fought Amalek. But again, he was not the Manhig Yisrael. He was not the leader of the Jewish people. He was the general. You have a president, and then you have those who are the generals or the commanders of the Navy, of the Air Force, etc., etc. That's not the president. So even though Joshua did have a leading role fighting Amalek, he never had a leading role as a rabbi, as a teacher. Now, in contrast, for example, we find that Aaron, the brother of Moshe, besides being the high priest, was also a teacher. And the Talmud tells us that every time Moses taught something, it was taught 4 times to the Jewish people. And the Gemara says like this, when Moses, over the 40 years, gave over a teaching, he first called in his brother Aaron, and he gave Aaron the teaching, face to face. Aaron sat on his side. Then he called over Aaron's two sons. He taught it to them, again, a second time. They sat on his two sides. Then he called in the 70 elders, and he taught it to them. And they sat on his sides. Then all of them together went out to all the Jewish people, and Moses taught it a fourth time. After the Jews heard it from Moses once, Moses left. Now Aaron repeats it and teaches this also a second time. Then Aaron's sons teach it a third time. Then the 70 elders, one of them, teach it a fourth time. So now each group is hearing the teaching 4 times. You see, you're lucky here. You can't only hear it once from me. But then you had to listen to it 4 times. Now, why 4 times? Because there are generally 4 levels in Torah. Pshat, Remez, Drusoid. There's a simple interpretation, Remez, the hint. There's the Drush, the homiletics. There's the Soid, the esoteric, the Kabbalistic. Each time, they heard it on a different level. However, we don't find that Yeshua was part of that mix. He never became the preacher. He never became the teacher. So now that Yeshua is going to be the successor of Moshe Rabbeinu, he is now 96 years old. Wow. The name was given to him at the beginning of the 40 years, when he was 56. Now he's 96. And by the way, he was never married until he entered into the land of Israel. Because all day he was studying Torah. All day he was serving Moses. That's it. He was dedicated to his teacher. So now, before Moshe Rabbeinu passes away, he needs to give Joshua authority. And therefore he gives him a maturgaman, he gives him one to translate his words to the rest of the people. Interesting to note that my grandfather, Rabbi Jacob J, Hecht, of blessed memory, was the Rebbe's maturgaman. The Rebbe would talk in Yiddish, and my grandfather would translate into English. So when there were rallies for children and the Lag BaOmer parades, and when the Rebbe spoke on the radio, my grandfather would translate into English and give over the Rebbe's words so that the wider community would be able to understand what the Rebbe said. So we see this concept of a maturgaman goes all the way back to the very beginning of time. It goes back to Moses, the very first Rebbe, Moshe Rabbeinu, our first teacher. All the way back there was the concept of a maturgaman, someone who would translate and give over the words of the teacher to the students. So that's the first thing. So on this day, you had 2 Nesiim, 2 leaders at the same time, Moses and Joshua. They both had authority. And Moses now declares that you should know Joshua will be the successor. And therefore he's going to have a maturgaman. He's going to have a spokesman who will amplify his words. Why? Because people are going to say, all your life, Joshua, you were quiet, you never said a word. Now all of a sudden you think you're the leader? Yes. Moses made him now the leader. No one can come along later and complain. Now, even though he became the leader, Rashi says, you should know, he was called, the Torah calls him Hosheya. The Torah testifies that he was humble. Even though he became now the most powerful man alive. He became the leader of the Jewish people, the most mightiest army in the world. Yet, he remained as humble as he was in the shadow of Moses. The Talmud says, Moshe Rabbeinu was like the face of the sun. And Joshua, he was like the face of the moon. He reflected off Moshe. He had no ego. He had no agenda. He was the student of Moshe. Even after he became the leader, he considered himself to be the successor of Moshe, to channel Moses' teachings and leadership to the Jewish people. So this is the insight of Rashi over here. Now, what is the lesson for all of us? The portion of Hazinu is learnt and studied every year at this time, which means around the time of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. This is when we read the Parsha of Hazinu. And therefore, every detail of the Parsha is connected to the time of the year. What is the connection between Rosh Hashanah and the portion of Hazinu? And the answer is like this. What happens at Rosh Hashanah? We spoke about it many times. The theme of Rosh Hashanah is Ano Emloich, which means that we, the Jewish people, we coronate God as our king. And that's why we blow the shofar, because at the time of old, they would gather together the people, and they would coronate the king by the blowing of bugles and shofaros. And the same is true today. We blow the shofar to coronate God as our king. Now, a person may say, look, God needs me to coronate him. We, every single Jew, coronates God as king. Aha, we're so smart, we're so special, we're so powerful. God needs us. Comes along the Torah and says, you should know, look at Yehoshua. This Yehoshua, who is now the king of the Jewish people, Torah calls him Hosheah to teach us that even though he had tremendous authority, tremendous power, yet he remained humble as he was still in the tent of Moshe. This is a lesson to all of us. Every year, Rosh Hashanah, there's a new energy, there's a new light in the world. Because when God becomes king again, he brings in new blessings for the year to come, new health, new parnasa, new wealth for the people, and success, etc., etc. And one begins to think, you know what? I'm wealthy, I'm beautiful, I'm smart, I have a nice house, I have a second house, I have a third house, I have a nice car, I have nice roller skates, whatever it is, I have all these amazing things. You know why? Because I'm better than everybody else. Why would God give me so much blessing if I wasn't good? Why would God give me so much talent, have a better voice and a better brain and a better heart than everybody else? It must be deep down, God thinks I'm better than everybody else, and therefore I have a right to be arrogant. And you begin to count your blessings. I have grandchildren, I have clothing, I have a nice watch, I have a nice bracelet, I have a diamond, I have all these wonderful blessings. And every year the blessings get greater and greater. And all of us have blessings. If you look into your daily life, every single one of us has blessings. If you get up in the morning and you're vertical, it's a blessing. Okay? If you can have scrambled eggs and make a brach on it, it's a blessing. Okay? We have blessings every day. So you say to yourself, I'm so arrogant, I'm so beautiful, I'm such amazing. I have a right to walk around with my nose up into the sky. And therefore, Hazinu reminds us, as we enter into the new year, and God is showering upon us all of these amazing blessings, to remain humble and to remain diligent and focused in our service of Hashem, and to realize that we are lucky, not smart, and we are fortunate and not great, and that we are chosen to be able to be a channel for God in this world. And by following the path of Hosea, which is Yehoshua, which is humility, this is the vessel for God's blessings. And the more humble we are, and the more thankful we are, and the more gratitude we have, the greater the blessings will be. And even though Rosh Hashanah was a few days ago, and God already opened up the book of life, and gave us all we need for the year to come, we have the power to upgrade the blessing. These 10 days, you can upgrade the blessing by more prayer, by more charity, by more resolutions. So we hope and pray that as Yoshua took over the baton from Moshe and brought the Jewish people into the land of Israel, he finished the job that Moshe Rabbeinu did. We too will be able to finish the job that our forefathers began when they left Egypt with that promise that they will enter into the land of Israel we too will be the ones that will be fortunate to enter into the land of Israel with the coming of Mashiach speedily in our days.